Between cars and rags, a boy was washing more than cars. He was polishing his future. Humiliated by a businessman, he responded with wisdom and dignity. That response not only changed his life, but awakened dormant consciences. The morning began early in the parking lot of Soho Financial Center, one of the most exclusive business districts in New York City. Among the luxury cars arriving and departing, a thin boy, barely 12 years old, waited silently. Alex Gutierrez held a rag in one hand and a bucket of soap in the other, while his eyes shone with unbreakable hope. He wasn't begging, he was offering a service. He cleaned tires, polished windows, applied wax to car bodies. He earned little, but every dollar counted. His mother, Mrs. Lucy, an independent seamstress in the Bronx neighborhood, struggled daily against a debilitating autoimmune disease. Little Alex was her only constant support. He had left school months ago, but every night, by the dim light of a recycled lamp, he devoured books lent to him by Mr. Oliver, the librarian at the community center who had taken pity on his situation. One day I'll go back to school, but now Mum needs me, he repeated to himself every morning upon waking in his small two-room home, where his mother's threads and fabrics occupied almost all the space. That May morning, particularly hot for the city's spring, Alex had managed to clean 3 cars before noon. The executives paid him without looking at him, some with an extra coin they dropped indifferently, others simply complying with the agreed fare. To them, he was invisible, just another street service in the city of contrasts. At noon, a latest model Audi abruptly stopped in front of him. An elegant man in an impeccable suit and leather briefcase descended from the vehicle. Mr. Frank Morgan, a recognized businessman in the automotive sector and owner of several dealerships in the country, handed him the keys with a gesture that mixed contempt and authority. "Clean it well, kid. I don't want to see a single spot when I return," he ordered, without even looking into his eyes while checking messages on his latest generation phone. Alex smiled and nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, sir. It will be spotless, I promise." "Yeah?" With extraordinary dedication, the boy worked on that car as if it were a work of art. He polished every corner, meticulously cleaned the interiors, and paid special attention to details that others would overlook. For Alex, each car was an opportunity to demonstrate his worth, to prove to himself that he deserved something better. 3 hours later, Mr. Morgan returned. His face reflected the tension of a complicated business day. As he approached his vehicle, his gaze stopped on a tiny detail, a small watermark on the rearview mirror. Without thinking twice, he exploded. "Is this what you call clean?" he shouted, pointing at the mirror. "Incompetent. I paid you to do a decent job." The shouting attracted the gazes of executives and employees passing through the parking lot. Some slowed their pace, others pretended not to notice the incident. "These starving people disguised as workers are all the same," continued Mr. Morgan, raising his voice even more. "Useless. You only know how to hold out your hand. You probably didn't even finish elementary school, right?" Silence fell like lead. Alex didn't react immediately. He breathed deeply, lowered his gaze for a second, and then, with a serenity uncharacteristic of his age, he looked up and responded. "You're right, sir. I didn't finish elementary school." "Yet," he said in a clear, firm voice, "but each car I clean brings me a little closer to going back to school. My mom is sick and we need the money. But I read every day, and someday, maybe, I won't have to clean cars anymore because I'll have finished my studies." Alex paused, his bright eyes fixed on those of the businessman. "Every tire that shines is one more line written in my imaginary notebook of achievements, and forgive me for saying this, sir, but you may have a lot of money, but it seems you don't understand anything about the true value of things." These words, spoken firmly and with dignity by a 12-year-old boy, resonated like a moral slap. The silence around them became heavy, almost tangible. Mr. Morgan's eyes opened in surprise, his face reddened, but not with anger, rather with an emotion he couldn't identify. Among the spectators, an older woman of distinguished appearance, with perfectly styled silver hair, observed the scene intensely. Mrs. Sarah Vance, owner of one of the most important educational publishers in America, couldn't take her eyes off that boy who spoke with the wisdom of an elder and the dignity of a king. Mr. Morgan, visibly affected, tried to articulate a response, but the words wouldn't come out of his mouth. With an abrupt gesture, he threw a high-denomination bill to the ground and got into his car. Before driving away, his eyes met Alex's one last time through the rearview mirror. What the boy saw in that look wasn't anger, but something much more, surprising. A wet glimmer revealing that his words had penetrated the powerful man's armor. When the Audi disappeared, Alex bent down to pick up the bill. He hadn't even finished standing up when he felt a soft hand on his shoulder. As he turned, he found the warm smile of Mrs. Vance. "Young man, I'd like to talk to you," she said, in a voice that conveyed both authority and compassion. "I think you have a story worth hearing." The small apartment in the Bronx had never received such a distinguished visitor as Mrs. Sarah Vance. The publisher observed every detail attentively: the worn but immaculately clean walls, the antique sewing machine that occupied the main corner, the carefully stacked books next to the only bed, and the dignity that permeated that humble space. Mrs. Lucy, seated in her sewing chair with trembling hands on her lap, listened with disbelief to the account of the encounter between her son and the businessman. "Your son has a gift, Mrs. Gutierrez," explained Mrs. Vance as Alex served coffee in uneven cups. "It's not just his intelligence, which is evident. It's his moral clarity, his dignity. In my 40 years in the publishing world, I had never seen someone so young with such ability to articulate profound truths." Mrs. Vance's proposal was as generous as it was unexpected. A full scholarship to the prestigious American Academy, books, uniforms, and a monthly stipend to compensate for what Alex would no longer earn by returning to school. "I can't accept it," Alex interrupted firmly, surprising both his mother and the publisher. "At least not like this." Silence invaded the room. Mrs. Lucy looked at her son with concern, fearing that his pride would deprive them of this unique opportunity. "I'll accept the scholarship, Mrs. Vance, but on one condition," the boy continued, with determination in his gaze. "I'll continue cleaning cars on weekends. I don't want charity. I want to earn my place, to prove that I deserve this opportunity." Instead of being upset, Mrs. Vance smiled with admiration. "That only confirms what I thought about you, Alex. You have my word. It will be as you say." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of changes. The new uniform, textbooks with the smell of fresh ink, evaluations to determine his academic level. To everyone's surprise, except perhaps Mr. Oliver the librarian, Alex proved to be less behind than feared. His nightly readings had kept his education alive. One Saturday morning, while Alex was working in the parking lot as he had promised, a familiar shadow was cast over the car he was cleaning. Looking up, he found himself face to face with Mr. Frank Morgan, the businessman who had humiliated him weeks earlier. The man looked different. His impeccable suit was still there, but his posture was less rigid, his gaze less haughty. For a moment, both remained silent as if words were insufficient to cross the abyss that separated them. "I've been looking for you for days," began Mr. Morgan with an unusually soft voice. I needed to talk to you." Alex nodded without letting go of the rag he was cleaning with, as if that piece of cloth were an anchor to his reality. "Your words. I haven't been able to get them out of my head," continued the businessman. "They made me remember something I had deliberately forgotten." With hesitant gestures, Mr. Morgan pulled a worn photograph from his pocket and showed it to Alex. In it, a boy not much older than he posed proudly next to a newspaper stand. "That's me at 13, he explained. "My father died when I was 10, and my mother washed other people's clothes to support us. I sold newspapers before and after school. I promised we would never go hungry again." The businessman remained silent for a few seconds, as if it were difficult for him to continue. "I succeeded, but along the way I lost something important. I became what I despised most when I was a child, someone who judges people's worth by their appearance or their money." Alex listened attentively without interrupting, his dark eyes fixed on the face of the man who now seemed more human, more vulnerable. "I don't expect you to forgive me," concluded Mr. Morgan. "I just wanted you to know that your words did more than embarrass me. They gave me back something I had lost a long time ago." The boy remained thoughtful for a moment, processing that unexpected confession. Then, with the same serenity he had shown that day, he responded, "My mother says that forgiveness is not something that is given by merit, but because it liberates the one who forgives. I forgive you, Mr. Morgan, but as you yourself said, words are not enough. It's actions that truly define who we are." That conversation marked the beginning of another transformation. Mr. Morgan began to regularly visit the parking lot, not to monitor Alex, but to get to know him better. He soon discovered that the boy was not only wise, but also brilliant. His understanding of mathematics, his passion for history, and his ability to explain complex concepts with simplicity revealed an extraordinary intellect. Meanwhile, at the American Academy, Alex faced his own challenges. The children of businessmen and politicians looked at him with distrust and sometimes with contempt. The Bronx Scholarship Kid, some called him, as if his origin were a label that defined his worth. "Is it true that you cleaned cars before coming here?" Carlos Mitchell, son of a senator, asked him one day in a mocking tone during recess. "I still clean them on weekends," Alex replied, without flinching. "It's honest work, and has taught me that respect is earned, not inherited." The response disconcerted Carlos and the others. They didn't expect dignity, but shame. They didn't anticipate pride, but apologies. Little by little, some classmates began to see him with different eyes. The most surprising transformation, however, occurred in Mr. Morgan. The businessman, inspired by Alex, began to develop a scholarship program within his company for young people from marginalized neighborhoods. Project Dignity, he called it, and designated a significant part of his annual profits to finance it. One afternoon, while Alex was studying in the small community library in the Bronx, Mr. Morgan visited him with a proposal. He wanted the boy to give a speech at the official inauguration of the project. "I don't want to be a symbol," Alex responded gently. "I'm not special, Mr. Morgan. I'm just a boy who has been lucky enough to find people who believed in him." "Precisely for that reason, it should be your voice they hear," insisted the businessman, "not to turn you into a symbol, but to serve as an example, so that other children like you know that their circumstances don't determine their destiny." After thinking about it carefully, Alex accepted, not out of vanity, but out of responsibility toward those who, like him, struggled daily for a better future. The auditorium of the Morgan Foundation was full. Businessmen, politicians, journalists, and above all, young people from different marginalized neighborhoods of New York City had gathered for the inauguration of Project Dignity. In the front row, Mrs. Lucy, in a dress she had made herself, watched with moist eyes as her son stood next to the podium. Beside her, Mrs. Vance smiled with maternal pride, while Mr. Oliver, the librarian, adjusted his glasses to hide his emotion. When Alex took the microphone, the silence was immediate. 8 months had passed since that encounter in the parking lot, but the change in him went beyond his impeccable uniform or his more upright posture. There was a light in his eyes, a quiet confidence that contrasted with the image of the shy boy he once was. "Many think my story began when a businessman humiliated me, and I responded with dignity," he began in a clear voice. "But they're wrong. My story began much earlier, when my mother taught me that honest work should never shame us, when Mr. Oliver lent me my first book, when I decided that my circumstances would not define my future." His words resonated in the auditorium, capturing the absolute attention of every attendee. Dignity is not something that is granted or received. It's something that is built every day with small decisions, with seemingly insignificant acts. It's in the way we clean a car, in how we respond to an offense, in the way we face difficulties. Among the audience, Carlos Mitchell, the classmate who had previously despised him, listened attentively. His father, the senator, had been invited to the event and had insisted that his son accompany him. "You have a lot to learn from that." "Young man," he had told him, "this project doesn't seek to create symbols but examples," continued Alex. "We don't want to inspire pity but respect. We don't ask for privileges but opportunities. And above all, we don't forget where we come from, because our roots are our strength, not our limitation." As he concluded his speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. Mr. Morgan, visibly moved, embraced Alex with genuine affection. That boy had not only changed his life, but was now changing the lives of many others. The following months brought new challenges and joys. Alex had formed a study circle in the Bronx, where every Saturday afternoon, after cleaning cars, he taught mathematics and reading to neighborhood children. He started with 5 students, but soon there were 20, and then 50. They needed to move the classes to the patio of the small community library. "You should be enjoying your adolescence. It's not carrying so many responsibilities," Mrs. Vance told him one day, concerned about his pace of life. "This isn't a burden," Alex replied with a sincere smile. "It's my way of honoring the opportunities I've received. Besides, teaching helps. I better understand what I learn." For Alex's 15th birthday, Mr. Morgan organized a surprise. He had contacted medical specialists from a private clinic associated with his companies to evaluate Mrs. Lucy's condition. After months of tests and experimental treatments offered for free, the improvement was notable. Her hands no longer trembled as much, her energy had returned, and although the disease hadn't disappeared, it was controlled. "It's as if they've given me back a part of my life," Mrs. Lucy confessed to her son one afternoon as they sewed together. She had regained the ability to work for longer periods, and her designs were gaining recognition thanks to Mrs. Vance's discreet promotion among her friends. At the American Academy, Alex not only stood out for his grades, but for his quiet leadership. He had earned the respect even of those who initially looked down on him. When the school organized a national essay contest on the future of America, his text on dignity and work won first place. The true progress of a nation is not measured by its tallest buildings or its widest avenues, he had written, but by the dignity with which its most vulnerable citizens live. The essay went viral when a journalist published it in his column. Soon the name of Alex Gutierrez began to circulate among educators and social inclusion professionals across the country. He received invitations to speak at schools, and even a university offered him an early scholarship for when he finished high school. Life followed its course, with natural ups and downs. There were difficult days, moments of doubt and fatigue, but Alex had learned to face each obstacle as an opportunity to strengthen himself, each criticism as an invitation to improve. 5 years after that incident in the parking lot, on a cool September morning, Alex, now 17, crossed the plaza of New York University. He had been accepted to study law, fulfilling one of his most cherished dreams. During the welcome ceremony for new students, the dean invited him to share a few words about his journey. With the same serenity he had shown that day in front of Mr. Morgan, but now with the wisdom accumulated from intensely lived experiences, Alex spoke from the heart. "Life has taught me that it doesn't matter so much where we begin, but what we do with what we have," he said in a measured but firm voice. "This phrase has become the mantra of my existence. It's not about where you start, but what you do with that." He paused, looking at the hundreds of young faces who watched him attentively. "And I want to confess something. Although now I'll be completely dedicated to my university studies, until last week I was still cleaning 1 or 2 cars on Saturdays. Not out of economic necessity, thank God, but as a personal reminder. Because what made me strong was the soap on my hands, not the diploma in my pocket." Among the audience, Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Vance, and Mrs. Lucy applauded with pride. Also present were the children, now teenagers, from the Bronx whom Alex had taught for years. Carlos Mitchell, who now studied economics and had become a close friend, whistled enthusiastically. Alex concluded his speech with a reflection that would resonate in many hearts. True dignity is not in what we have or achieve, but in how we walk the path of life. It's in firmness without resentment, in perseverance without arrogance, in the ability to respond with wisdom, not anger, to injustices. And above all, it's in always remembering that each of us, regardless of our circumstances, has an immeasurable value that no one can take away from us. Alex's words contained a universal truth that transcended his personal story. It was a message about the strength of small daily dignities, about the transformative power of a response given with wisdom instead of resentment, about the value of staying true to one's roots while looking toward the future. That night, Alex returned to the small apartment in the Bronx that he would soon leave to move closer to the university. As he helped his mother prepare dinner, he reflected on the long road traveled and the dreams he still had ahead. His story had not ended. In many ways, it was just beginning. And in some parking lot in New York City, perhaps, another boy would be cleaning cars with the hope of a better future. Alex promised himself that he would continue working so that this boy, and all those who like him struggled from the shadows, would find their own path toward the light. Dear listeners, we hope that Alex Gutierrez's story has touched your hearts and reminded you of the transformative power of dignity and perseverance. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special list with equally moving stories about overcoming and resilience. Find it here by clicking on your left. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life from a perspective that seeks to inspire and elevate the human spirit. What did you think of Alex's response to the businessman? Have you experienced a similar situation? Await you in the comments to continue this conversation that, like dignity itself, is built together.